Welcome to Our Future is Kind, a podcast exploring how we build the future we want to live in, one kind act at a time. I'm your host, Michael G. Neese, president of Our Future is Kind, and your trusted companion as we search out kindness strategies we can use in our everyday lives. Together, as we chase the idea of building a kinder future, we will interview experts in kindness, team building, human motivation, corporate culture building, relationships, plus politicians, artists, and those with a vision for a healthy and kind future, one we all want to live in and deserve to enjoy together. In addition to interviews, we will consider positive depictions of humanity's future in art, literature, the movies, and media. And we will issue kindness challenges each week, give an update about Our Future is Kind, the company, and what it's doing to stay true to its mission. So, let's dive in. Before we start this episode, just a quick reminder about the Human Summit. It's a movement focused on connection over division, kindness over judgment, and empathy over apathy. If you want to learn more, check out www.thehumansummit.com/home. As one of the co-founders of this Human Summit, I'm so excited to tell you just a little bit about it. Co-founder Kevin Hunting and I have put this together with an amazing board of advisors, and we can't wait to share it with you and the rest of the world. Check it out now and reach out to us if you have any questions. Welcome to Our Future is Kind podcast. Today I am joined by none other than Bernadette Smith, founder and CEO of the Equality Institute, and an award-winning author of 4 books, including her latest, the bestseller, Inclusive 360 Proven Solutions for an Equitable Organization. I have my Kindle version right here. Bernadette's insight has been trusted by major brands, including Fortune 500 companies and global leadership teams because of her impact as a change agent for inclusion. She's been featured on the New York Times, in the New York Times, CNN, and on the Today Show. Bernadette's also been named one of Chicago's notable LGBTQ executives by Crain's Chicago Business. When she's not busy speaking, you're likely to find her on a local pickleball court. Please help me welcome Bernadette Smith.
Hi, Michael. It is great to be here. Thank you so much for having me and for that kind introduction.
I'm so glad to have you here today. I know that you and I have had great conversations in the past, including on your podcast. And we will definitely get to that here in a second. But I gave an intro about you. But I want to hear, what do you feel makes you you?
Yes, what makes me me? Well, I am a good vibes girl. You know, I am someone who is an eternal optimist, and I call myself a silver linings seeker. So I try to stay away from toxic positivity and, make sure I'm on the other side of that line. I want to make sure I acknowledge, the problem or the oppression or whatever, but what makes me me is that I like to shine a light on what's going well and say, hey, let's do more of what's working instead of spiraling about what's not. And I bring that energy into my work as a keynote speaker, as a writer, and in my small but nimble consulting firm.
I love the fact that you point out that focusing on the positive is a really important thing, but also that we can't be naive. We can't pretend that the punches aren't going to be thrown our way. I think that is really, really important, that we have a very clear vision of what's coming at us and how we handle that. So I'm curious, in your writings, in the ways that you support people, how do you talk about those sorts of things, like being, radically accepting what is currently going on that's not going well, while also embracing our power to make changes for the good?
I stick to the facts. I might say something like, for example, I have a weekly podcast, as you know, and a weekly newsletter called 5 Things, and the show, my podcast is called 5 Things in 15 Minutes, Good Vibes and DEI. And so the way I sort of strike that balance is to use facts and data. So for example, in my newsletter, I might share a story about, a Carnival cruise line now has a lot of options and amenities for folks who are neurodivergent. Great, Carnival. And also you should know that 15% according to the CDC, 15% of all of us are somehow neurodivergent. And that means, people with ADHD. So it's sort of acknowledging the macro, while focusing on the micro in terms of what the good vibe happens to be. So that's kind of how I don't spend a lot of time on the problem, but I want to at least make sure I acknowledge it. Sometimes I go deeper.
Well, I do love your podcast. I think that it is wonderful to be thinking about injecting some positivity into our brains and into our hearts early on and frequently throughout the day, because it's so easy to start feeling powerless and feeling like we just oh, it's all too big. We can't possibly make a change on our own. When people come to you and say, gosh, I mean, do you really feel like you're making a big difference? Do you feel like I can make a big difference? How do you answer that? How do you help them?
I know that I'm making a difference. First of all, I ask my readers, I ask my audience, I do an annual survey, and they tell me that I'm making a difference. My firm is very big on evaluations. So we hear in our evaluations that I'm making a big difference, right? And so, and also it happens in smaller ways. I gave a keynote speech last week for a financial services firm, and it was at their national sales meeting. And my speech was about building authentic relationships with increasingly diverse clients. And I talk about how we often tend to stay in our lane. We surround ourselves with people who are like us, and it just tends to sort of perpetuate, right? In a little bit of the neuroscience of why that happens. And then, the next day I was sitting at my gate at the airport, and this man comes over and introduces himself to me, and he was in the audience, and he tells me about how he often stays in his lane, and, frankly, it's getting a little boring in my lane, and, and we just end up having this really lovely conversation. And he took the time to come over and share that with me and share the impact of my speech. And so, I'm fortunate to get validation that my approach is working and resonates with folks and is making an impact. It would be pretty hard, pretty lonely if I wasn't getting validation. I'll tell you that. And listen, I can't expect validation all the time. So I have a testimonials folder in my email. So if I'm really feeling down, I can go look through that.
Yeah, I have a couple of letters from dear friends who are fellow speakers, and I have them laminated, and they actually sit just right over there so I can pick them up and remind myself that I do have power. I do have an impact, and it does matter. One of the things about Our Future is Kind, the company, and our listenership here at the podcast is embracing power and thinking about, how the future is going to be. And so knowing that if we can envision it, then we have a target and we can aim for something. And if we don't envision it, if we just kind of, get up, get on the bus, go to work, do the work thing, get back on the bus, get home, make dinner, go to bed, it's so easy to forget about that bigger impact that we can have on the world. And so I guess I want to know a little bit more about your firm. I want to know a little bit more so the audience here can get some strategies and some takeaways about how they can find community, how they can find power, how they can inject some kindness into the world.
Sure, absolutely. Well, let me tell you actually a little bit about my entrepreneurial journey. If you'll hear that story. And then I'll talk a little bit about, the firm. One thing I will say, just to sort of to frame this, is I've been an entrepreneur for 20 years. And so having been, having had my own business for that long has given me a hell of a lot of resilience and grit and I have seen a lot, right? And I've had some major crushing defeats and failures and fantastic triumphs, like being on the Today Show. So it's been a roller coaster as life goes, right? But when you're writing your own paycheck and you're the only one who's writing your own paycheck for 20 years, you need a lot of tools. I have so many tools to help me maintain that grit. So like my testimonials folder, my meditation. I mean, I have I consider it a bag of tricks of, what can I pull out when I'm struggling, when I'm dysregulated. So I kind of want to mention all of that, because that's a really big part of how this work continues, is really taking care of ourselves first. So I just really want to make sure I say that, because when it is really tough, when we do feel defeated, we really need some strong resilience skills, and we really need community. Just like you have your, speaker friends that you've laminated those testimonials. I have some great speaker friends as well, and they're just a text away, right? So, and we send each other voice notes through text, because we know that it's a slog sometimes, and we need to be able to lift each other up. So I just kind of want to say, get that stuff in order, right? It matters. Having a community, having your own self-care tools and rituals around that, and ways to kind of manage yourself, is really, really critical when so much is out of our control.
Well, having voices in our early years, and then especially that kind of linger with us and kind of follow us into our studenthood and then our career journeys, it's really easy to feel like I have to do this on my own. I need to be independent, and I need to, I'm weak if I have to reach for help. I'm weak if all of these things. I personally don't believe that. I personally believe that, we can defeat those critical voices. And it sounds like you've got a great bag of tricks. So hopefully everybody's got your notepads out, and you're listening, or you're watching along, and you're taking furious notes on how to make that. But now tell us about your firm. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, so my firm is a diversity, equity, and inclusion firm, and we are still leaning into that phrase. We are still leaning into this work. We are not going anywhere. We have some contract consultants on the team who work with our clients in sort of looking at their policies, procedures, partnerships, and programs, and look at those for gaps for equity and inclusion. I have a diverse team of facilitators who lead the various workshops, on everything from different cultural awareness months and events to cultural competency. And I'm a speaker, and that is really what I do. And I'm sort of the face of the brand. I have, my own podcast and newsletter, all that. And I'm the visionary leader. And I'll be honest, I mean, this is sort of this firm as it is now has been an evolution of how I first started my business 20 years ago. And I don't know where it's going to go next. But I know that I trust myself, and I'm excited to see where it goes next. Right. And so, talk to me in a couple of years about where we go. But right now, my job is to really support clients and help them find the light and find positive examples of how to keep doing this work, and positive ways to connect authentically with others. And, just really, my job is to cheer people on.
It's wonderful. Yeah, it is wonderful that you're still leaning into this work. The idea of everybody deserves a place at the table is core to the identity of Our Future is Kind, because we try to envision, okay, it's the future now. We've done all the right things. We've gotten here, and who's at the table? And it's, at least from the perspective of everybody on my team and how we talk to, the different clients that we consult with, and the various audience members, from the talks that I do, it's having everybody have a voice who's showing up in good faith. We don't all have to agree. We don't all have to see things the same way as each other. In fact, it's great to have healthy debate. But if you're
Yeah.
showing up in good faith, that means that you are trying to hear the other side. You're not trying to suppress it or label it. Talk to me about that.
Absolutely.
Have you ever had labels thrown at you? Have you ever been, have had people try to suppress the work that you do or suppress you in some way? And can you talk to, the audience about what are your strategies? How do you climb out of that?
Oh, suppression. I don't know that that's a word I identify with.
Okay.
It's very possible. I don't know my mindset exactly at the time. But it's very possible that I've been an entrepreneur for 21 years now because I can have my own terms about my sexuality and I don't have to worry about coming out at work, right? My first firm was a wedding planning firm with an LGBTQ specialty to advocate for same-sex couples. So I led with my identity. Even in the work I do now, I mean, I'm not in the closet in any way about my identity. In fact, I joke about it during my speeches. And so it's something I can be playful about. And it's, again, it's very likely that I sort of lead with it in that way. And I always have professionally, because I'd rather be rejected off the bat and not even have to, go through it personally. Like people can free reject me if they want, right? I had some experiences professionally because I started my firm when I was 27. I had some experiences professionally in the few years before that in which I was in the closet, and I just didn't, don't want to go back there. So that's certainly, kind of the smallest example of suppression. But listen, when you're an entrepreneur, there's a million voices in your head that say, "Oh, play small, keep yourself safe," things about avoiding rejection, right? That are, it's our brain's way of keeping us safe. And so I have to work through that, my own mindset. But as far as the other, sort of the external piece, I think that I have managed to mostly avoid it.
That's great. That's fabulous. Yeah, I am the parent of and family member of just multiple folks who are part of the LGBTQIA plus community,
Mm-hmm.
and absolutely want to see all of my family members, all of these loved ones have opportunities. And I have definitely seen some rhetoric and had some discussions with folks who are trying to educate themselves, all the way over to people who are just absolutely intolerant and don't see why they should have to care.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, if you have any particular ideas of what I can tell my family members, about I love the idea of let people pre-reject you. I think that is a great phrase because then you don't have to have that toxic personality in your
Mm-hmm.
life. But what if you're stuck at work? I mean, you help corporations figure out how to do inclusive policy building, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so have you heard tales of friction and people not being accepted and what
Yeah,
and what's involved?
absolutely. Of course. Yeah. And I mean, that's the reality, right? I mean, I think that the data that I've seen, the most recent data that I've seen says that about 50% of LGBTQ plus folks are not out at work, right? And so, that's a huge problem, right? And so whatever it is, I think folks hide a lot of things, not just their sexuality or their gender identity. But data shows that a lot of people are suppressing who they are in the workplace. I think 45% or so of straight white men downplay or they cover some part of who they are in the workplace, right? So it's something that a lot of people go through. And in my keynote, Voices Carry, I talk about how that's kind of normal, but it also means that we're not benefiting from diversity, right? And so when people are suppressing parts of their identity or even parts of some of the stuff that's happening in their family or whatever drama there is, if they are keeping it all in, then they're going to be more distracted. They're going to be more checked out. And they're also probably not going to contribute, speak up with their big ideas, or speak up if they hear something offensive or something that could be, bad for the market or bad for the product. Right. And so when we sort of keep one thing to ourselves, we keep a lot of things to ourselves, which means that the teams are not psychologically safe, which means we're definitely not reaping the rewards of diversity. And so the antidote to all of this sort of being really closed off and really just tight, the antidote to all of this, and everyone has a role to play in this, it starts with a little bit of sharing. But we have to, and then kind curiosity, but we have to create space for that sharing. We have to sort of acknowledge that life happens and it can be hard sometimes, and there's distractions and competing priorities, right? And so leaders need to acknowledge that and create a little bit of space for maybe connection before content at the start of a meeting. And I think when leaders themselves share a little bit of their own stuff, gosh, when I first started working here, it was really hard to find all of the balance, and I struggled with X, Y, or Z. When they share something like that about their mistakes, their failures, their struggles, it creates space for others to do the same. It gives them others permission to do the same. But leaders need to create space for those conversations to begin with. And then we can start to be more real with each other. And I'm not asking people to unpack all of their stuff, right? It's just about sharing a little bit to let people in so we can sort of move it out of the way and get to the work, right? And so when we have that space, and then we use what I call the ARC method, which stands for ask, respect, connect. When we use the ARC method in these conversations, then we can, build bridges and create more psychological safety and, sort of, again, fulfill the promise of diversity, build more innovative teams. All of that stuff comes when there's more space for people to be themselves.
Space for people to be themselves, I think, is that key phrase. I love that. And the idea of having people share parts of their lives. When I've done consulting work and worked with leaders at various companies, I occasionally get resistance. Not always, because the people who hire me generally have already bought into the idea that they need to be human leaders. They need to be thinking about their teams a little bit. But occasionally I will run into a little bit of resistance, like, gosh, aren't we just burning time here? And do we really have time when we have all these deadlines? And I think, leaders in good conscience are really trying to, dot the I's and cross the T's and get over that finish line on goals.
Sure.
And so using the time to connect with others can feel a little foreign for some leaders. And do you have any tricks or methods for getting them to kind of feel along with you that this is a great investment of their time, and in fact the payoff is even better when they do this?
Well, that's where there needs to be some sort of inclusive leader training, and people need the business case. The business case for DEI is alive and well. So how do we get leaders to buy in and sort of see this as a priority? Well, we need data and we need stories. So that's what I do in my inclusive leadership workshops, is help them find the data and the stories that they can use to be an influencer. And so not just an ally, but an influencer or a change agent. And so once they have that and they see how it all connects, then they can drip it down to their team.
Love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So hopefully the audience is already thinking about how they can call you up or get in touch with you to engage your services. So all of that will be in the show notes. But the podcast has a very specific theme and flavor to it. We try to do two things, but it's really one thing, but it's kind of two things.
Okay.
So if you'll go with me on this thought experiment, the idea of establishing what a target is for what does the future look like if we're doing all the right things, right? So that's two pieces. It's what does that future look like? So I want you
Right.
to, Bernadette Smith, I want you to go with me on this journey. It's 2125.
Okay, here we go. Key is
2125.
down. Here we
You
go.
have just popped into society and everything has been done right. What are the characteristics that you notice, whether it's a workplace or a coffee shop, it's anywhere that you want to be with any people that you want to be. What do you notice that is so great about 2125?
In 2125, I think my hope is that will be more trauma informed and therefore more empathetic of the people around us. Ultimately, I feel like we're all pretty selfish humans. And in 2025, I would love 2125. Well, I'd love to see it in 2025 as well.
Sure.
But I would love to see us be leading more with love and less with our trauma and our baggage. I have this sort of visual of us humans sort of in like a boy in a bubble kind of thing where we're all in this sort of bubble and we're walking around, and the bubble is our baggage, it's our trauma, it's our slights, our exclusions, our oppression, the thing that our parents said to us when we were a kid that made us feel less than, all of that stuff, our big T and our little t traumas. And I kind of visualize us now sort of all bouncing off of each other and sometimes bursting each other's bubbles, and then the trauma sort of spills and clashes, and then it's this whole conflict. But until that happens, because of the bubbles, we're not truly connecting. And so it's kind of this visual, I know. So I'll follow your thought experiment with my own visual. But 100 years from now, I would love us to just be walking around free of all of that, and just leading with love and compassion and joy and play, having a lot more fun.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned fun and play. Because that's a huge part of what it means to be human. If we don't take time to go and enjoy the lives that we have, and it's all about deadlines and deliverables, then gosh, what are we really here for, right?
Yeah.
So the other big piece in this, and I think you've partially answered it, the other big piece is, what are the kind, courageous actions that we need to be taking between now and then to get there, to pave the way to do those things right?
Oh boy, how do we get there? Well, it first starts with having the awareness of who are the people we surround ourselves with. Are they like us? How can we be more intentional about connecting with people who are unlike us? I would love to see that as a start, because we have to start with intention. And I think when we start with an intention to connect with people who are different, and then look for ways to play. I will tell you, Michael, I have been obsessed with my career as an entrepreneur for, my entire life. And up until 2 years ago, I did not have any hobbies. Not only that, but up until maybe 6 or 7 years ago, most of the people in my network were white lesbians or white gay people, LGBTQ people. I did not have a great network of straight folks or a great network of Black or even trans folks, right? And so I was guilty of sort of what I call staying in my lane. And so what I would love to see is people being willing to get out of their lane. And one way they can do that is in pursuit of play. And so, yes, I became more intentional about getting out of my lane through, just networking and building my network that way, and being more intentional about connecting with folks. That was, one part that was very intentional. But then I discovered pickleball. And pickleball is a very strong passion of mine. In fact, I played this morning outside in 33 degrees because I love pickleball. But one of the things I love about it is that it has gotten me out of my lane. And one of the first experiences I had with that was, showing up, not really knowing how to play, but having a lot of swagger anyway, and a lot of, I can have some confidence, right? And so, and seeing someone who's like 70 on the court across from me, and I'm like, oh yeah, I got this, and then get my butt kicked, right? And so pickleball instantly taught me that I'm ageist. And then
Sure.
it's sort of the diversity lessons that I have learned and just lived in playing with a massively wide variety of people over the past 2 years. It's been a beautiful thing. And so it has given me joy, and it also has gotten me out of my lane. And so I would say, folks, when you're looking to figure out how to get to this future, start with being open to getting out of your lane, and then pursuing that with joy. So whether it's a book club, or whether it's a sport, or whatever, pickleball, whatever it happens to be, find joy in community with people who are different from you, and show them kind curiosity.
And I'm going to encourage everybody who's listening or watching this podcast right now to go to Bernadette Smith's website and look at some of her publicity images. There are a couple of really good shots of you holding one of the, are they pickleball paddles? Is that what they are?
Yes.
Okay.
They are paddles, not rackets.
You look very official and very spiffy holding those. So yeah, everybody go take a quick look and consider joining your local pickleball club. So let me ask you this.
Sure.
How do you stay inspired? We're trying to reach for this greater future. You and I live in service of our fellow human beings. What are the different things that you do? I mean, pickleball's great, but are there books that you reach for? Are there movies? Are there podcasts? What do you do to recharge your inspiration for that better future?
So my former coach would say that inspiration comes from inputs. And so I used to consume a ton of books on DEI and podcasts, and I had a million of those kinds of inputs. I would say, right now my inputs come from sales calls with clients and conversations with clients about what their problems are. And I get inspired by how I could provide a solution. I get inspired right now I'm taking a stand-up comedy class for women. So I get inspired by challenging myself in new ways and being around people who are different from me. I get inspired by not cluttering my brain with too many inputs, and instead allowing my brain the space. I don't have any music on or any podcasts on when I walk the dog, and most of the time when I drive in the car locally, and so I give my brain space for inspiration to flow. Most of the stuff that I consume now in a DEI way are, music and TV shows and movies, fiction. I love fiction. I'm tired of nonfiction and memoirs. I want to find stuff to celebrate. And that I have this discipline. I have my weekly newsletter, and because of the discipline of having a weekly newsletter with a very high open rate, people are counting on me to bring the good vibes. And so every Thursday, I call my learning day, and I read a whole bunch of articles that I have saved and newsletters that I get, and I just spend a couple of hours finding content. And so but I'm a headline and bullet point kind of girl with a lot of this stuff, so I can go through it pretty quickly. But that's my ritual, and that's my routine, and inspiration comes from there as well. So I do a lot of recording of voice memos in my phone, and I write an intro to my newsletter every week, and it's sort of like a letter to a friend. And so I have to find the inspiration for those words. I have to find the good vibes. So yeah, that's some of where they come from. And I'm going to write tomorrow. I have no idea what I'm going to say, but maybe it'll be about this conversation, Michael.
Well, I love that. Yeah. Tell everybody here how they can find your newsletter, because it sounds like something that everybody here should engage in. I mean, just having the conversation with you is already sort of buoying me up and making me feel more positive. So I can only imagine that, reading that newsletter's got to be great.
Yeah, it is. I'm so grateful that it has that effect on folks. That you can subscribe at 5thingsdei.com. And actually, I had someone send me an email just this week, and he's a fellow DEI practitioner in the UK, and he's like, you know what? I'll admit I don't read your newsletter all that often. Usually I just delete it, but I read it today for the first time in a while, and I'm so glad that I did, and I'm going to commit to reading it more often because it shines a bright light on the good stuff. And what we focus on expands, right? That's one of the universal principles. What we focus on expands. So let's focus on the good stuff. Let's do more of that. So yeah, Jeff, check out 5thingsdei.com and the podcast, which is also, you can find it on YouTube, watch it on LinkedIn. It's a live stream podcast, and you were a guest, and that's when I have a guest talking. We do it every week. We talk about the good vibes, and we just have a little chit chat about the stories and sort of a current events kind of thing. It's a fun show.
It is a fun show, and I definitely enjoyed being on it. The idea of reviewing what's good in the world makes you focus on what's good in the world. So I love that is the highlight here. So what's next for Bernadette Smith? What's the next big project that you're working on? Plug away. Tell us where we can find you and what you're doing.
I am right now. I'm very much focused on stand-up comedy. I'll tell you, I'm following my instincts, and so right now I have this wonderful class. So I just took it, and we had our performance show last week, and then I'm going to retake it. And so I did my 5-minute performance on inclusion in pickleball. I did a stand-up comedy bit on pickleball. And so, Michael, I'm going to just sort of keep exploring this and see what happens. And then in a few months, my biggest goal right now is to buy out one of the comedy clubs near me and do a 15-minute bit on pickleball with some openers from my class, and just invite everyone I know in the pickleball world of Chicago and see what happens. I'm just trying to have fun. What's coming next for me professionally? I don't know. DEI is a mess. Who knows?
Right.
I'm just I feel like almost like at the mercy, right? I'm not going to hustle though. Right. I'm like, I'm done with the hustle game. I'm going to have fun. And so what will be, and I trust myself and I trust the universe. How about that?
I'm not worried about you at all. I mean, you are making the most out of this life that you have, and that is so exciting. I hope anybody who's listening or watching and you're in the Chicago area, please, please, please look up Bernadette Smith. Find out when that comedy show is going to be, and definitely go to it. If I had a plane ticket and knew the timing, I would be there to cheer you on, because it sounds really fun. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, thank you so much for spending the time. I can't believe it's already fled. But thank you again for being on our Future is Kind podcast.
My pleasure. I love talking to you. We'll have to get you back on my show one of these days. And it's always a treat talking to you, Michael.
This episode's Kindness Challenge. Just like Bernadette Smith did, look into a hobby where a variety of people show up, like pickleball. Make connections with others in that club. It could be cooking classes, art classes, volunteering at an animal shelter, a sport, or something else that seems interesting and exciting to you. As you show up, be curious, be interested in others, and lift them with your kindness. What you'll find is that you are also being kind to yourself by signing up and having fun. Want to stay inspired? Bernadette Smith's latest book is Inclusive 360, Proven Solutions for an Equitable Organization. Pick up a copy today. Check out Bernadette's Strategies for Connecting at www.theequalityinstitute.com/followthearc, A-R-C. Check out Bernadette's podcast and newsletter at www.5thingsdei.com. That's the number 5 thingsdei.com. Also, find inspiration in helping others. Think holistically about what you do at work and how it helps people, and then get excited about the ways you are helping others. Thanks again for listening to our Future is Kind podcast, a podcast in search of a kinder future. Go out there and do something kind.